G'day guys, how you doing? Hope you're all doing fine. This evening I'm going to be doing a review. Now before I start, I want to just comment about the weather. Apparently it was the coldest day in Canberra since 1995, so very, very cold. I don't know why I added it in there. I guess I like to complain, but anyway. So, yeah, I really don't know why I had to tell you that, but I told you that. So, weather's very cold, so hopefully wherever you may be, it's a little bit warmer. The review I'm going to be doing is an Australian film. This is a psychological sort of thriller, although I'm leaning more towards a psychological drama with a very disturbing element to it. Released in 2009, directed by Jonathan Alf de Heide, and this movie is called Van Diemen's Land. And the story to this one is as follows. The true story of Australia's most notorious convict, Alexander Pearce, and his infamous escape into the beautiful yet brutal Tasmanian wilderness. In 1822, Pearce and 7 other convicts escaped from the isolated Macquarie Harbour penal station on the wind-lashed western coast of Van Diemen's Land. This band of Irish, English and Scottish thieves were immediately hurled into chaos as their bid for freedom floundered, and they were thrust into the heart of a harsh and foreboding landscape. With little food or equipment, in a place these immigrants knew little about, they battled a merciless enemy, the unforgiving barren land, a land where God wields an axe. So basically, Van Diemen's Land back in the 1800s in Australia is now known as Tasmania, the little island at the bottom of Australia, if you don't know where it is. But basically, Van Diemen's Land, it was a place for convicts sent from the UK, so Irish, Scottish, and a few English convicts. And the idea was to send them to Australia because it's such an isolated country that there would be no escape. So all these convicts, that's how my heritage is from Northern Irish convicts, and a lot of white Australians are from the convict era. Anyway, this surrounds the story of Alexander Pearce. Now, he's the most notorious convict of all. So Pearce, along with 7 other convicts, were working at this penal station, and the guard that was in charge of looking after them has been overrun. He's been overpowered, and it was a spare-of-the-moment decision that these convicts would take over this little penal station, and they decide to escape into the barren landscape. Now, they underestimated the landscape of Tasmania, and they find that although they've escaped, they have no plan, they have no food, and pretty quickly they start to turn on each other for a food source. And Alexander Pearce, if you've read up on him, you'll know that he did the eating, or most of the eating, and that's what he is famous for. So from that point on, it turns into a survival movie as these convicts battle not only each other, but also their own mental health deteriorates rapidly. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about the story. If you want to know more, then you're going to have to go out there and see this movie for yourself. Now, what I thought of the film. I can't help but feel that this was a missed opportunity. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot about this film that is very good, and it makes it worth watching. Cinematography is outstanding. Once again, another Australian film that's taken the scenery of, well, actually, I think this was filmed in Victoria. I don't know why, but it's supposed to be set in Tasmania. So the scenery of Tasmania, very authentic, and it also, once again, it shows how harsh and unforgiving the landscapes of Australia can be. It's one of the most unforgiving areas in the world, Australia. It's a beautiful country, but it can also be a very scary country. It is a survival film. It's a story about what lengths human beings will go to in order to survive, and the lengths that these convicts went to is actually quite ghastly. So it's kind of a horror film, but it doesn't really come across as a horror film, but what happens is actually quite horrifying. Now, as I said, a missed opportunity. I thought some areas of the film dragged a little bit. I thought the characters were very thin, so I really didn't care about them. It was more a case of seeing how each would die rather than actually caring. There are a few very disturbing scenes, which, not very graphic, which I actually thought would have been a lot better if you cared about the characters a little bit more. To me, they were just convicts who pretty much got into a situation at their own doing. So I didn't feel too much sympathy. If they stayed at this penal station, they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in now. But I just thought the very thin paper cutout characters, it would have been a lot better if they had a little bit more depth. The escape into the wilderness, it does show off the natural beauty of Australia, and as I said, there's a fear element to it as well because they get lost, but they just didn't play on the insanity part a lot. I actually expected something like Valhalla Rising, which is a similar kind of film about people losing their minds, whereas in Valhalla Rising, however, I thought they did a lot better in the insanity part. Kind of felt like you as a viewer were going along an insane trip. Whereas this film, the insanity element isn't really forced upon. It's not really, you're not putting yourself in the shoes of these convicts. So I thought that with a little bit more attention to the cinematography and the way that the atmosphere was done, while it's very unforgiving, I thought just a little bit more insanity, maybe some vivid colours, would have helped contribute to the overall feeling as well. I know a lot of the time I say seeing less violence can be better. In this case, I would have liked it to be a little bit more horrific. It was a truly horrific event, what these convicts did to each other. But I feel that the film really shies away from much of the violence, and it takes a lot of impact away. Now, as I always say, on-screen gore is, most of the time it's not necessary. Whereas I think in this film, if the director took a little bit more risk and showed how ghastly this cannibalism was, you don't really get to see any cannibalism except right at the end. But a lot of it's just implied, which I actually thought would have been better if you could actually see the horror that they were actually going through. So, all in all, I mean, the ending was very anticlimactic. It wasn't a terrible ending, but I just thought it was an ending that lacked creativity. And the whole film just had a little bit of a dull quality about it. So I was a little bit disappointed with this one. But don't get me wrong, I'm still going to recommend it. A lot to like. As I said, it's visually stunning. And it is a story about what human beings will do when they're desperate. So if you like that kind of thing, I would say go and get it. But there are enough negatives to prevent this from being a classic film. I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5. It does have its value, and I would say go and get it if this is your kind of thing. But I just feel that at the end of the day, it was a missed opportunity, and it should have been a hell of a lot better than it actually was. So that's my review for the Australian film Van Diemen's Land. If you're interested by this, then I would highly recommend you go out there and purchase yourself a copy. So 3.5 out of 5, not a bad movie, but it should have been a hell of a lot better. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.